Four Midwest Guys presents...
People have heard the stories. They've read the articles. But they have never seen...
Marvel DC King! Hello everybody and welcome back to Marvel DC Kings, a Four Midwest Guys production. This is our Season 2 premiere. With me tonight is Brian Wilmering.
Hey, what's going on?
And Aaron.
Hey, how's it going, man?
It's going good. Hey, thanks for tuning in tonight, guys. We're going to go off script a little bit. Usually we go episode by episode, but tonight, since we are a couple episodes in on Arrow, a couple episodes in on Flash, we're just going to go ahead and kind of just do our overall synopsis thus far, and maybe get back into our old routine next week.
Okay.
Let's start off with Supergirl. Okay, so let's switch it over networks, and it's now on the CW. Can you guys see a difference now that it's on the CW?
Go ahead, Aaron.
For me, yeah, I think you're definitely seeing a difference. Not only in the terms of how, like, the movement in when they're like in the flight, also in how they kind of have the city set up and how the lighting is. Like, there's a lot of minor little tweaks here and there, and especially in writing, you're really starting to see it pretty immediately, actually.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely got a different tone, different feel to it. It doesn't feel artificial. I will say they've taken the same Flash graphics package, special effects package, and have applied it to Supergirl. And
you actually see her use the super speed a lot more in the first episode than you did almost all of last season.
Not only that, even when they fly, other than maybe when the Martian
Martian Manhunter,
when he does the morph back, it's still a little cheesy, but it's not nearly as bad.
Oh yeah,
they've definitely stepped up the graphics package, which absolutely had to happen in my opinion to make Supergirl work.
Right. A couple things that I noticed that were different. So the DOC is now inside this nice glass enclosure that they see, and they can look outside. And she's like,
"This has been here all along."
She's like, "This was here the whole time. Why were we going all the way out to that one that was underground?" And
you made me fly to a cave.
Yeah. And
it was a fun comment about why they were switching it up.
Right,
yeah.
and then you had that. You had in this episode they killed off the whole romance thing that a lot of fans were upset about. The whole, like, why does Supergirl need to have a romance? Why can't it just be... So, like, this first episode of this season was all kind of like her finding her own way and wanting to become a reporter now.
Yeah, like, it had that... Not only was she kind of, like, emulating Superman to a certain extent, but you had that sort of... Like, last season was about trying to figure out how to make Supergirl work, and now it's, like, finding her as an individual outside of that sort of thing.
Yeah, I thought it worked really well. Can you tell a difference in the scenery because it's in Canada or the CW?
I think it's the CW.
Probably
overall.
A bit of both, because it's also switching production companies, I think, as well, right?
Right. It switched over to the same ones that Arrow and everybody else uses. Let's see. What has been your favorite so far?
On Supergirl?
Yeah, Supergirl. I mean, we're only one episode in, but
yeah.
What has been your favorite so far?
Well, the drone attack thing was pretty cool so far, and I think that's one of the instances where you really just see the improvement.
In quality,
terms of,
yes.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Though, introducing Lex Luthor's sister as, like, a possible villain or just character was actually a really good introduction as well.
Yes, I like that.
She's an interesting choice, too, because the last time I think I saw that particular actress, she was a villain Morgana on the old Merlin series back in the day. Yeah. And I think
really?
she had a British accent, and in this one she doesn't. So I'm still kind of adjusting watching her play an American role, like an American accent per se. But other than that, yeah, I've been pleasantly surprised, and I'll be honest, it's the next topic on the list, but I've been pleasantly surprised with Superman.
Yeah, that's the next thing on the list.
Yeah.
Do you like this portrayal of Superman?
I do, actually, yeah. Like, I think this show's actually hitting a really nice balance of, like, power management for Superman, because it's really easy to make him so overpowered that he's just an uninteresting character, whereas here he's, stronger than human, but he's not this godlike entity that you see in other variants of, he's the character.
This version so far, and granted we're only an episode in, reminds me very much of a modern day Christopher Reeve. feeling Superman.
Yeah, I think you can
Then-
definitely make that comparison.
Well, that's what the actor said. That's what he based his Superman off, not of the Cavill one, but off of the Reeve one. And if you noticed in Supergirl, we've seen Superman a lot more of the Clark Kent
Yes.
Yeah.
versions as opposed, and that's how we were first introduced to him. We weren't introduced to him as Superman first and then Clark Kent.
Right.
We were introduced to him as Clark Kent, the reporter. You know, he's outside on the phone. He's talking to Perry White, and he's, you know,
Great Caesar's Ghost.
Great Caesar's Ghost and everything else,
yeah,
right?
Right.
And so we're seeing that aspect first as opposed to Superman, right? And when he's Superman, he's really humble and like, thanks for your service and everything else when he walks through the DOC. So I mean,
Oh yeah, or there's that part after they save the plane where he's like, "Do you want to introduce yourselves?" Yeah, I always do it.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
that nice little thing where it's like, "Yeah, we're gonna."
He was like,
meet and greet a
she
little
was like,
bit.
I usually say hi. He goes, so do I.
Yeah.
I usually blah blah blah. So do I.
I changed his diapers. You didn't really have
yeah.
to mention that.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it was kind of neat. One thing, who do you think the other person in the pod was?
That really could go in any direction so far, I think.
Yeah, I think you could see another Kryptonian. Obviously,
Well,
it's
it's obviously Kryptonian.
possibly, unless somebody stole a Kryptonian pod. But
I think it's definitely Kryptonian. But which Kryptonian is it? Because when those two came to Earth, Clark was a baby. She
Right.
was a 12-year-old, so she was the oldest.
yep,
Because they didn't age in their pods.
Yeah.
right,
So he is that much older
than them.
than them. So he is a... What do you think?
Well, it's also depending on when he was actually put in the pod. Like, if he was part of, like, any sort of, like, prison thing, like some of the villains of the first season were, or whether he was just transported differently, or...
Right, well, this one was a pod and went through some kind of,
Star Forge or something like that.
yeah, something like that, where time stood still anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
So, really, it could be a character of almost any age.
Well, I like how they ruled out any kind of artificial intelligence right out the bat because they're like,
yeah,
did you
'cause
X-ray
that way you
him?
don't have to worry about, like, the
Brainiac story,
thing.
yeah. So we could definitely rule that out. He could be, if they want to, hopefully they don't go too hokey with it, like make him like Zod's son or something crazy like that, or,
Yeah.
you know, but.
Though
so-
it did introduce a villain towards the end of the first episode where, like, the guy that had the...
It's Metallo.
yeah, they turned him into Metallo.
Yeah.
And I was like, I haven't seen that character since, like, the old animated series. That's
Exactly.
a great character introduced for a villain on the show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of hooked me. I was like, all right,
Because
I'm
Metallo
going
was actually really cool, especially in the old animated series. They had him, like, running on actual, like, kryptonite as, like, his energy source.
And that's what they're doing on this one, too.
Yeah, like, that's such a great character to actually have as a villain on the show.
Yeah, I think this is going to be really good. And did you guys catch the Easter egg about talking about Gotham?
Yes, maybe we should move back to Gotham.
Yeah, I think we need to move back to
Yeah.
Gotham. It's just
Yeah.
funny because eventually they're going to pull him in. I think they're in talks
to try to get Batman.
to try to get Batman, but Fox has the rights to it right now.
Yeah,
So they're trying to
negotiate
negotiate to pull so they can pull Batman in. Can you imagine having a Justice League on?
with Supergirl.
Yeah, I think if you look at how CW has the shows and they're all in that universe, you could have a pretty well-run, like, Justice League, to be honest. Like, at least a small one, like Justice Society of America sort of thing.
They hinted at it pretty strongly in Smallville. I mean, it was Batman-less version, but still, it was still
Yeah.
really well done.
Mhm.
So it could be done again.
But, I mean, you look at how they've actually run characters on CW with Flash, with Arrow, and Legends of Tomorrow, and... yeah, I mean, even looking at the improvements on Supergirl, which is phenomenal comparison to what it was last season,
Well,
you
yeah.
could have a really decent run for it.
You can tell that what CW has going for it, other than the teenager vibe, obviously, but they also have. It seems like these are comic book fans that are writing this show.
Whereas you look at last season of Supergirl, you did not get that vibe at all.
It was just so.
It was just so main network. You could
Static.
Yeah.
Is
Well,
how
that, and
I
I
would
mean, it
describe
kept pushing, like, some of the comedy romance aspects of it so much more heavily, and it didn't write the characters well, the fight scenes weren't well done.
Right.
And a lot of that's really improved heavily, even in the first episode.
Right.
Yeah.
That's one of the big differences we see.
Let's hope it continues.
Oh, I agree. So one that you guys haven't watched yet, Arrow.
Yep.
They've introduced a couple new villains in their show. This villain called Tyrese Church.
And you mentioned he was the actor that was on Walking Dead, right?
Walking Dead, right? He was one of the characters from Walking Dead that got killed off. he plays this like, I wouldn't call him a genius, but he's one of those criminal mastermind type characters.
Okay.
Trying to pull all of the gangs underneath him. He comes in and he does his big move and stuff. And
so kind of like uniting the crime element.
Yeah,
sort of thing, like becoming like a mob boss like Kingpin.
Yes, very much like Kingpin. And we introduced to some new people in the Team Arrow or Scooby Gang, Mr. Terrific, Wild Dog, and I think in the preview for the next episode we get to see the new Black Canary.
Okay. So some of the more smaller like heroes that are kind of in the DC universe.
Right. Because
I think Supergirl's actually introducing that in another couple episodes as well, where they're having their Jimmy Olsen become like Guardian or something.
Yes, Jimmy Olsen's to become Guardian. It's not the next episode, but they did announce that.
Like they released like a still of it.
I think based on the synopsis, people already figured it out. But something else, they show, like the previous Team Arrow, like Speedy, his sister, and Diggle in the army and stuff.
Yeah.
So they're still showing little bits of the other team to show you where they are.
Like kind of making it a more expansive show.
Yes, they gave you what Laurel said to Oliver when she was dying, like on her deathbed.
Yeah.
That was an interesting scene because everybody was wondering what she said.
Has that been like a thing they've been kind of hiding for like a season or two?
Well, when she died on the episode, she's like, "I need to tell you something," right? And he sat down on the bed, and then it
cuts away.
It cut away, and the next thing you know, she was going into cardiac arrest.
Yeah.
And so you had no idea what it was. Was she faking her death? Was that just so that she could get out? There was no...
Yeah, all open-ended.
Right.
Yeah.
So they did talk about that. And then at the very end of the... we also get to see Ragman.
Ragman?
Yeah. So I had never heard of him. I had to look him up in my DC Encyclopedia.
That is a character I am not familiar with.
He even had his own comic.
Really?
He is a Jewish superhero.
Okay.
Okay? Whose father owned some kind of like antique type store,
Yeah.
okay, and had bought these rags or clothes or whatever that were ancient.
Okay.
He bought them. Knew they were special, right? That's what he always told his son. And you watched Arrow last year, correct?
Off and on.
Okay, so did you see where all the missiles went? Like all the bombs, Damien Dark set off all the nuclear weapons.
No, I don't remember that, but
Okay, so Damien Dark set off all the nuclear weapons, and they were able to take them all down except one.
Okay.
And what's her name? Felicity?
yeah,
Is it? It's not Felicity, is it?
Felicity's his girlfriend.
Yeah, Felicity. Yeah, okay, Felicity
or was
was his girlfriend. Yeah, so she was able to redirect instead of hitting Star City with 7 million people. Was able to divert it to this remote city called Ravencroft or Ravenscroft, something like that, which is where Ragman is from.
Okay.
As the bomb was coming, his dad threw the rags on him
to save him.
So, and he absorbed the power from the nuclear weapon, blah blah blah, with the rags.
So mystical rags plus radiation.
Right. So he has super strength and agility and stuff like that.
Like, is he just covered in rags like a mummy?
Yes, very much like a mummy.
Okay.
But he can take his hat off. Like he can take the clothes, he can take the rags off. They're not attached to his body.
Okay. So he's not like that one character from the like Spider-Man 2 2020 that's like actually the rags and like it just disperses.
The rags do come out of his hand in the show.
Well, it's one of those things like I think the character I was thinking of like he is just like the rags themselves. Like there's not a physical thing.
Oh no, he actually is physical. He has physical form underneath, but the rags will extend out and.
Okay, kind of like the change for Spawn,
yes,
sort of thing.
Yes. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, I don't know whether
that
they're
actually
going to go
does sound kind of cool.
But anyway, he is introduced as one part of Team Arrow.
Okay.
Okay, and then at the very end, Church is trying to work out a plan to get rid of Oliver, right? Because he knows you have to knock out the number one guy to be the number one guy, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
he goes with the prison philosophy of knock out the biggest person you can find.
yes.
Okay.
So anyway, so he's doing this deal, and all of a sudden, Church gets hit with an arrow, and he thinks it's the Green Arrow.
Yeah.
And he's like, I told you, and then Prometheus
Shows up.
and jumps on top of him, and he says, you can run this city, but Green Arrow's mine.
Mm.
And that's where they leave it, and they don't tell you who the Prometheus is.
Mm.
There's already
Theories out there.
fan theories out there of who it is. I was talking to a guy at work. He thinks it's actually Laurel Lance because it's a voice modulator.
So that suggests it's a character you've been introduced to already.
Yes, so it's somebody we've already seen.
Isn't he dead though?
Do what?
Didn't you say Lawrence Lance was dead though?
Right, but Flash
Screwed with the timeline.
screwed the timeline.
So it's one of those things you don't necessarily know what small details might have been changed.
Right, so that
Butterfly effect,
right, so
yeah.
that's what they're trying. So people were like, "Oh, it could be Laurel. Oh, it could be Tommy, his best friend growing up, Merlin. It's Merlin's son, Tommy Merlin." So anyway, that gets us out of Arrowverse, right?
All right.
So let's go to Flash, which we all like, which we all watch.
Yeah.
Yep.
What's been your favorite part thus far? Aaron, we'll go with you first.
I think I've actually really liked the introduction of the alchemy character. Like, not only in terms of the design, where you have like this almost plague doctor sort of mask and like this kind of old school like magical feel to it, but then you also have like this transition of the timelines, like for where the flashpoints merging with like the current universe in weird little ways, and might even be bringing aspects of other multiverses into it. Like, I think that's a really interesting character. And he almost seems to be a character that's jumping between, like, realms or, like, kind of the world, because he's not popping up, like, on camera feeds, and he's all of a sudden, like, in this maximum security, prison at the end, and just magically is kind of there. And it's an interesting character that I'm kind of liking.
Yep.
I think I like the idea of seeing a more active Cisco with vibe powers and vibe gloves and having an actual psychic. I really dig the idea of the next episode that they previewed, which is Jesse Quick, and obviously seeing Kid Flash maybe, and having 3 speedsters.
Well, yeah. It's one of those things, like, this show's been really interesting about including a lot of the speedster characters very specifically, because you look at a character like Rival, and that's a person I would not have even remembered at all in terms of any of the speedsters.
I know we're jumping ahead. I'm not digging the Rival character very much.
They might have killed him off at the end of this.
I hope so. He looked too much like Condor Man with the like a bird looking kind of. I don't know. I just wasn't
how they had like the mask set up.
How his cowl looked.
Yeah, it looked very much like a bird, and I don't know. It just
it kind of looks like some of the masks you would see out like some like the Japanese superhero films.
Yeah, I guess
like,
maybe that's what they were going for.
It.
Yeah, maybe that's what they were going for. I don't know. It just, like I said, I couldn't help but think of a really bad Disney movie when I was a kid called Condor Man, and that's what it reminded me of.
I was okay with it, kind of. I was just praying that it wasn't going to be another Zoom.
Yeah,
like
I think they've avoided that.
Yeah,
well.
I did not want it to be another like. This is the Zoom. This is the speedster we're going to see all season, kind of thing.
Yeah,
I'm kind of tired of speedster versus speedster.
Because I was like, oh my gosh.
Don't get me wrong, like, it's interesting, but it kind of makes it seem like being a speedster is like the top power in the universe.
Well, yeah,
Flash.
When you get into the Speed Force stuff, it kind of is. But so. Yeah, I wouldn't mind him fighting somebody that's not a speedster.
Right. Well, Alchemy is going to be the biggest villain.
Yeah.
And like to your point, Aaron, I really think Alchemy knows of all the multiverses, and he knows about the Flashpoint, which is why he knows who had powers in the other verse and everything else. Now, what was really weird was the skin.
Oh, where they're molting?
Yeah, they're molting.
Well, that does kind of suggest that, like, Alchemy is like he's actually providing some sort of like chemical coating, and they're actually shedding off like their skin and becoming something kind of in between.
Well, it's like they go into like a cocoon almost.
Yeah,
like kind of, or a snake losing its skin.
Yeah, like it definitely has that sort of vibe to it.
Well, yeah, and I would like to know how he knows the chemical version of the Speed Force too, because that's how he gave Rival back his power. So I want to know how he knows that.
He's also hinting at there being something else that he's preparing this universe for, which is like kind of hinting at like that kind of larger villain sort of thing.
Yeah,
which is kind of fascinating. It's a nice setup.
If they tie it into like a dark side or something, that would be sweet. But I don't think you can do it without Superman. But But of course, now we have a Superman.
Yeah,
so.
and I mean, there is going to be a crossover event sometime this year,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
maybe.
And what did you think about Flashpoint only being one episode, but covering a 3-month time span during that episode?
You know, at first I didn't like it, but if he has to deal with the repercussions all season long, and that's what one of the big storylines for the season is him dealing with the consequences of what he did and how much everything's changed and how it put it's his fault, everything that happens that's different from this point forward, and the consequences thereof. I'm okay with it now.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of agree with you on that. Like, don't get me wrong, if you look at the Flashpoint, like, that's kind of a big story arc, and they went through that really kind of quickly. A little differently, but quickly. But yeah, I think having that set up where he realizes he can't just keep going back and changing it, and that each time he does it, it's kind of cracking up to something else, and it's not something he can go back to.
Right.
Like, it's creating rules that doesn't make the solution going back in time every time.
Right. He knows he can only go forward.
Yeah.
The other Flash taught him that. So, yeah. That with that limitation, I'm digging it. I mean,
and I think it kind of it's one of those things that works because it kind of ends that kind of open-ended, like, story thing that would just make time travel everything meaningless in terms of, tension and consequences.
Yeah.
Like, closing up that kind of story path where it really kind of allows you to make the show a bit more dramatic and not just like, well, go do a different universe or go back in time. And
yeah, it makes it more linear, and it's easier for somebody to follow, at least through a season.
Right, and then, if you remember, one of our previous episodes, we had talked about that was one of our biggest issues, was like, so at the end of every season, are we just going to reset and have to watch the same development over again?
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, that fixes that.
Yeah, it addresses one of the issues we've had with the show, which is actually a really great show on CW. I actually think it does it better. It's a better, like, superhero show than Arrow or Supergirl the only thing that comes close are the Netflix shows, but that's because there's a budgetary difference there.
Right. So one of the things that happened when he reset the timeline by resetting the timeline, so like the Flashpoint, when he went back with Reverse Flash to reset the timeline back to what should have been.
Yeah.
Right.
That broke we'll use the analogy that the other Flash used. It broke the coffee cup a little bit.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't put it back together.
Right.
Way.
So there was a little bit of difference. One of the little bit of difference was he went to Felicity to talk to her about, I have nobody else I can talk to. I can't tell any of them that I reset the timeline. What am I supposed to do? Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, who is that? Looking at the baby boy on the picture, and she's like, it's John Dale Jr. And then she knew right away. She was like, and he didn't have a son before he had a daughter. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those like,
you screwed this up.
Yes, like you changed. And she's like, what else did you change? It was one of those like, what else has he changed? And if you think back, Legends of Tomorrow, when they came back to 2016, after not fending off whoever they were fighting last season, I forget, the Time Masters or whatever, that future, it wasn't 2016, it was 2040 something, or whatever it was.
It was like 2020 something.
2020 something?
I think so, but I could be wrong.
I think it was later than that. 2030 something maybe. Whatever it was, Oliver had lost his arm, and he was alone inside the Team Arrow cave or whatever. And there was somebody going around the city pretending to be the Green Arrow. Turned out to be John Dale Jr. We're like, who is John Dale Jr.? Where did this guy come from? Now it's being tied in to Flashpoint.
It's kind of setting it up all up in a similar universe.
Right, so when we do have that multi-crossover, we'll see that probably
you can see
happen
the
again.
effects of like the Flashpoint paradox and like the other shows on the CW.
Right. So, that was pretty cool.
One nice tie-in.
Yeah, one other aspect we have, one of the Harry Potter favorites, Malfoy. I can't remember what his name is off the top of my head, the actor's name, but he now is on The Flash as the CSI for the Metahumans department.
Actually, until you mentioned it, I did not even realize that was the same actor.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
I've seen the Harry Potter films, but it didn't click for me at all. It was just like, wow, that's kind of a douchey British guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I hate that guy too, when he kept saying he hates that guy.
Yeah.
So now he's on the show, and Barry doesn't like him. And you could tell he doesn't like Barry.
Oh, yeah. Well, towards the end of the episode, he's like, I don't trust you, and that makes me hate you.
Yeah. So it was one of the, it was kind of cool. Now, what did you guys think about? This kind of goes with that whole alchemy thing about him saying he was going to bring the villain's powers over.
Yeah, kind
right. He was going to say everybody with powers is going to have powers here, whatever, blah blah blah. But he didn't say anything about the superheroes per se.
I know. I just assumed like it was implied that he was talking about everyone that had powers and
everyone, or just the villains. I assumed it was just the villains he was talking about.
I assumed it was everyone, because once again he's talking about like repairing that universe and like prepping it for something later down the line.
No, it could.
And you look at how Flash himself reacts, and then one of the first people he goes to looks at is like Wally West.
Correct, because he was Kid Flash, the other one.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the Caitlin Snow, Killer Frost.
Yeah.
She shows her hand at the very end. You see the Frost.
One of the
Cisco
things
vibe.
about that is that like a time difference where she was affected by the actual like explosion, like the Flash was, or is that more of like her being in the same category as Rival, where she got that from an alternate universe?
I think it's the alternate universe, the alternate multiverse, like the other world, Earth 2, merging. In my opinion.
So, do you expect her to actually kind of transition to like Killer Frost and be like kind of a villain later down the line for the show?
See, I don't know if she's going to be, because if you in the other world, she kind of went away from being the Killer Frost and just being like Frost. You know what I mean? Like she wasn't a killer. She kind of went good at the very end of that.
I'd like to see her struggle.
Well, she went more like I don't want to say good. She went more like a Catwoman, where she's right on the border of being a villain / good when she wants to be, kind of thing.
I think it would be nice to see Caitlin, who's the Caitlin we know so far, actually struggle with that, because she's always been pretty much a goody two shoes on Earth 1. So it'd be nice to see her deal with.
Yeah, I mean, outside of struggling with grief, like with people dying on her.
She's always kind of been the damsel in distress too, really. So
kinda, yeah.
It would be nice to see her.
Especially last season with Zoom.
Maybe kick a little ass wouldn't hurt.
Right now, speaking of dealing with people that died on her, okay. Robbie Amell has confirmed that he's coming back on Flash as not Firestorm. What was his alternate?
Oh, was it Robbie or something?
Deathstorm or whatever it was.
Oh,
when he went bad.
Okay. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Oh, you mean from Earth 2?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can't remember what he's talking about.
He confirmed that he's coming back on Flash as that character.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah, it might have been Deathstorm.
And will that be the turning point for Caitlin?
Well,
to turn into Killer Frost,
or is that a character that she herself actually has to fight to kind of protect Flash and Cisco or something?
Well, yeah, because she would have the opposite power.
Yeah, so. It'd be a power that could neutralize it a little bit,
right?
And the last one we see is the preview for the next episode, Jesse Quick, who we all knew from the name. I knew from the name from the comics, but we knew it was going to happen.
Right.
And then when we saw it in the last episode where she got hit by the Speed Force.
Yeah, around the same time as Wally.
Her and Wally did,
we knew something was going to happen. And then we saw her go back to Earth 2, and we're like,
what the hell?
Okay, I guess we're not going to get her. And then now the next episode looks like the portal opens back up.
Yeah.
And she comes through with
her dad.
Yep.
So, quick question: does that suggest that there's a possibility that when Flashpoint Paradox occurred, it actually changed some of the events that actually happened in Earth 2 as well?
It's possible.
It's possible, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure it did. When they changed the stuff for them to go back to Earth 2, I think that fixed their breaking up, exploding Earth thing. Okay, so my thought is when those two come back into this one,
that they're going to be able to notice the differences.
They'll notice they're going to notice the differences. They're going to be like, wait a minute, why is this, and they're going to be able to see the differences.
Like because it was cut off from that world, that the timeline isn't actually shifted there.
Yeah, that's what I think is going to happen.
That would make sense.
But we'll see. And then who is Dr. Alchemy? So Aaron, we already touched on it. That it looks like he can go between worlds or between timelines. He knows about the other timeline, obviously.
Yeah.
Be able to give Rival's powers back. I read up a little bit on it for the in my DC encyclopedia, and it said that he has a split personality. He has dual personalities. One of them which is good, and he finds some kind of magic stone that allows him to build these mystic abilities, and then when he has those abilities is when he starts to turn into this villain side of things and battles the Flash and other things.
Well, it's also interesting is whether it's going to go with how truthful an adaptation it is, or if they're going to, because it's a more minor character, they're going to take some more liberties. Or, like, is he a character that existed in the original timeline, or was he only in the secondary one after the Flashpoint?
Now, see, I think he was only in the secondary timeline after Flashpoint, because if you watched, he wrote on the mirror without actually being there.
Yeah.
So I think he was standing in the previous...
Well, one of the things is that's kind of interesting. You look at someone like Cisco Ramon or Vibe, like, he can actually see through multiverses a little bit. So if you have, like, maybe a variant of that character from, like, a different timeline, like the billionaire equivalent from the Flashpoint, you could have someone who does already some things that are actually pretty similar already.
Right, so you think that Dr. Alchemy could be Cisco?
Well, from the Flashpoint, possibly.
Okay. Brian, who do you think Dr. Alchemy is?
Yeah, it's tough for me. It's a tough sell. Honestly, I'm not too terribly sure. I'd like to... I would think since he's alchemy, I would say he'd have to at least have a background in chemicals or some sort of chemistry, I would think, because of it being related.
Right. So that brings me to what the current rumor is on a lot of the Facebook feeds that I follow, is that it's going to be Malfoy.
Okay.
I call him Malfoy, but I don't remember what his name is actually on the show.
Yeah.
But the
it's
new
just the guy that everyone
CSI,
seems to like all of a sudden, except for Barry.
The CSI guy for the metahumans. So he's got his good personality as the CSI for the metahumans, but he also has the bad personality, because it was really funny when Barry asked for the file on whatever the guy's name was. He just handed it right over. He didn't ask for the one by the lake or anything else. He just asked for it by name.
Yeah.
Without even thinking about it, and then later on goes, "How did you know that's who that was blah 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 blah? You snuck a sample. How did you do that?" But it was one of those. I think he's in that position, the metahuman thing, because he knows
how to use it.
Yes.
Or he wants to use it. Yeah, it's possible.
All right, let's go to our last DC thing.
Okay.
We'll go with Gotham.
All right.
Okay, so we are... What season is this? 3?
3 or 4, I think.
4.
I want to say...
4?
I think it's 3.
I think it's 3.
It might be 3, yeah, it's 3.
It's just because it's a longer season, it kind of...
Right.
Yeah.
It's like 23 episodes or something.
It's
in comparison to every other
Sorry, it's the
DC
same
show where
as,
it's like 10.
same as Rebels. It's 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have Jim now. Some time has passed where he's been off the force and everything. And now he's a private investigator / bounty hunter, getting paid by the GCPD to catch criminals. Do you think it's good for the story or not?
I think it's a nice transition for the story. Like, I think it's taking him in a different position. It's putting him in a situation where he's a little working outside the police force and kind of allowing to kind of run wild a little bit.
Yeah, it's good for the character because they've taken him and he's more gritty now. He's more Gotham now than he is Jim Gordon, so to speak. He's more of a darker version of Jim Gordon. He's pretty far away now from what we know of Jim Gordon.
Right, as Commissioner
Gordon.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it definitely fits. I think it works.
Good. And what did you think about Cobblepot running for mayor? Now running for mayor and becoming mayor?
I like it because it's once again, it's what I thought was missing last year from Gotham was, and we kind of started to see when they brought his dad, that his Pee Wee Herman is his father in,
right?
And that's the aristocratic side of Penguin.
Well, yeah, I mean you definitely see Penguin. He's wanting to be loved by people, and I mean that's one of the reasons as we kind of look at the difference between like Nigma and Butch. Like that's why he's starting to side with Nigma slightly more as well. Is that he likes the fact that he is being kind of loved for and accepted and rallied behind.
Yeah, I think
especially in his crusade against Mooney.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's see. So speaking of the Enigma versus Butch, we saw Butch was paying off a lot of the people voting, right?
Right.
And Nigma stopped it.
Yep.
Well, supposedly stopped it. Yeah.
Right. Nigma stopped it, and Penguin won anyway.
Yep.
And now all of a sudden, because Penguin was in line with Butch, saying, "Yeah, we needed to do that so I could win," and here he won anyway. And then real quickly, Penguin changed his tune and said, "Butch never believed in me," and now all of a sudden, Nigma's turning in his number 2.
Nigma's being slightly manipulating in that regard as well for position. But I think he almost also proves his point really easily on when he first addresses when he pays the little girl to be like, "I'm so appreciative and I thank you so much for getting rid of all the monsters," and then he's like, "Here's your $1." It's like, "Nice doing business with you."
How do you
and
feel
now?
now?
You see that like heartbreak on Penguin from it.
Yeah, he's definitely playing with Penguin. He is outsmarting Penguin right now. He's manipulating him. He'll be the number 2. He's going to be the kingmaker behind the scenes.
Which is actually a pretty decent position to put Nigma in from a writing standpoint.
For a Riddler, yeah, absolutely, because that's where Riddler would do, in my opinion. Yeah, he wouldn't want to be the public face. He'd rather be the pulling the
to be
strings
honest, you can
and
make the argument
manipulating.
that's a better position for Nigma than him just having jewelry heists and leaving clues behind.
Yeah, that would, from the 60s. But I love putting those two together, and I love how they're writing those two together because, number one, it's 2 of the big 3. Right, you're only missing the Joker, and then you've got the big 3 together, which I think everybody wants to see at some point.
Right.
Not just the Joker. Don't get me wrong, I want to see Joker too, but I would love to see the 3 of them put together.
I don't know if I'd really count Riddler as like kind of one of the big characters from villains for Batman, but
from my perspective, yeah, absolutely. They're the top 3 villains that Batman faces.
I think your next tier down, and maybe not even the next tier, like maybe just like a subsection of the top tier, would be Bane.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, I think that's almost like a generational thing. Like, I know Riddler's like a classic villain.
Yes.
But if you look at his importance as time has gone off since like the old 60s show, he has been increasingly a smaller character.
True, because they have gone other ways. They've gone a little more physical route with anybody can do physical damage more so than
mental
stuff. That's why you have the next tier down is like Scarecrow and Scarface, Two-Face, and those kind of villains.
You know what's actually weird? I actually think I would count Two-Face as being a bigger villain than I would Riddler, personally.
Not on...
Just because you have Harvey Dent persona as being that so tied in with Gotham, and then you have just kind of the personality behind it, and just... That's a personal opinion.
Yeah.
That's understandable. I wouldn't necessarily... I would just say... to me, Riddler is number 3. If I had to rank him, you got Joker, Penguin, then Riddler.
Okay.
But yeah, I like Two-Face though too. It's a great character. Yeah.
Oh, it's just like I said. I think it's partially generational because you look at where the Riddler's been just from the '60s on to now, and it's just a character that's been decreasing in it's how well it's applied.
And I think that's why I love the guy who plays. I can't think of the actor's name who plays Nigma now.
Oh, he does it amazingly well.
He's resurrected.
And I mean, Gotham, it has actually done really well with both Penguin and with Nigma, especially with Nigma in terms of just how he originated to that spot.
Sure.
Like, that was almost just, he was a little weird, shit went wrong, and it just snapped him.
Yeah, completely snapped him. It's perfect.
Yeah, it really is a great origin story for him.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I like Jim Carrey, and it was a fun role to see him in the movies, but he wasn't really...
No, he was Jim Carrey.
He was Jim Carrey trying to pretend to be.
Well, I mean, that also... There was... Arguably, the Two-Face in that film wasn't that great either.
Well, no, but...
And then you had Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze.
Well, let's not go down that route.
All right, so speaking of that next tier down, when you have Scarecrow and Two-Face and Mr. Freeze, the other one we saw in this... Well, 2 we saw. I'll bring up the one we barely saw. We saw Man-Bat.
Yeah, they did introduce him, and
because they had talked about they were gonna.
It took me a while to realize that's actually who that character was supposed to be.
Right. So, and
it's such a poor portrayal of him too.
Right. Well, they had talked about. There was a thing that they were going to have Batman on the show.
Oh, that was the big tease.
It was the big tease because it's actually Man-Bat.
Yeah.
And the other one that goes along with that little tier there, Poison Ivy.
Yes.
So we saw...
Well, she's kind of been on the show since the beginning, but yeah, they've definitely changed her up a bit.
Right, but originally she was just Ivy, and she never really... She didn't have any powers or anything.
Yeah.
and then now
Well, she doesn't really have powers that it's shown, right?
No,
she just killed a dude because she liked the plant.
Right, but she has more of that seductive nature.
Well, they aged her up like 10 years.
Right, well, that's what I'm saying. Do we like how that happened? Do we like the aging up of changing the character? I mean, like, they changed the actress because they said they wanted to use that more seductive side of Ivy.
Yeah, they wanted another hot character on the show.
Yeah, that's fine. You might as well, because all the other villains are 10 times older than Batman anyway in this show.
Yeah,
except for Catwoman.
Except for Catwoman.
Well, so far. Give it another season.
But yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I like the idea of bringing out Ivy and their more seductive side and seeing where they go with it. You know?
Personally, I actually don't like it. But I didn't really like how they've handled the character from the beginning either. Like, the only real scene I actually kind of thought they were doing an okay job was when you had her like actually like gardening like the magic mushrooms and like using them for like different properties and like actually growing different strands. Like, okay, that's kind of a cool interpretation of the character, not making it like magical powery, but actually just making it like just skilled botanist sort of thing.
Yes, I agree with that. I
actually think that was a highlight for the character in this show. And now she's just killed a dude with what, a bat? A vase? Something
it was the vase that the plant was in that he threw in the garbage.
Yeah.
So far, we haven't seen her with any of her powers per se.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, I think that's kind of a step back for the character who hasn't really been handled as well in the show.
I just like it because I think we're going to see more of her. Because up to this point, she's been used very sparingly.
Yeah, the actress is definitely much more attractive.
Well, yeah, and honestly, the character's barely been used. I mean, Selena's used a lot more than she ever was. She's the nerdy kid in the corner.
Well, yeah, essentially.
Yeah. So.
And what about Bruce's doppelganger?
Yeah, that one's throwing me for a loop. That's completely off the chart as far as I'm concerned. I don't know about you guys, but it's kind of out of left field.
It's a little odd. And so far, like, I think there's potential for it, but I'm not really into it so much. In the same reason, I didn't like the use of Clayface as Jim Gordon's doppelganger last season. I thought that was a weird misuse of the character. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, who knows? It almost looks like you look at his increased speed, reflexes, like, and just strength. And I wouldn't be surprised if they go with this weird route where he does replace Bruce Wayne and he becomes Batman down the line or something out there.
Yeah, I mean, he did do the superhero and drop down with on one knee and lands on the car. And
like, I don't think it's necessarily great from a story point of view, but...
Because the Batman isn't a super... I mean, he doesn't have any powers. You know...
And what happened to Mr. Freeze? We haven't seen him yet either.
Yeah, nothing yet.
It's kind of odd that we haven't seen him.
I'd like to see more.
We did get to see Doctor Strange, and we know the Joker's coming, but when is he coming?
God, I hope soon.
Who knows? You think it'll actually be the same kid playing him?
It is. They already said he's signed on.
I thought by now he'd be back. I was at least by the last week's episode, and still nothing. So
my guess is that he won't be back until mid-season.
Yeah,
it'll be the mid-season cliffhanger.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
and then he'll be the whole second half of the season. Speaking of stories, the Mad Hatter Alice storyline.
Well, I mean, talking about like a small villain, like the Mad Hatter is an amazingly small villain in the Batman universe, but done really well here, actually.
Yeah, I kind of dug the whole storyline. In fact, I kind of wish they had actually maybe gone an episode longer with it.
Like I wouldn't...
He only got 2 episodes, though.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he escaped, so, I mean, it could be a character they showed...
I didn't like how they killed off Alice. I thought that was kind of
that was
forced and...
Yeah.
But who does the commissioner turn into now?
I don't know.
The commish. It's not the commish. It's the...
Captain.
Yeah.
When he has that little drop of blood drop in his eye.
Right.
Just,
yeah, did you see his whole face turn? And then...
Yeah, I have no idea who they make that. But it could... They've hinted at him having kind of like that army past where he had like kind of those traumatic experiences of, going too far. So maybe it's something that it brings that out of him that he's been trying to suppress and making a...
As long as he doesn't become the Thing, I'll be fine with it.
Yeah, becomes the Thing.
But, I mean, the use of that character was actually amazingly well done. Then he actually gets, like, the Tweedles, like, as, like, his henchmen.
And they happen to be the wrestlers.
Tweedledee, Tweedledum.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, like, I can't think of them actually using henchmen really that well in this show before.
Right, and in the animated series, the henchmen were used all the time. Whether it was Penguin's henchmen or or
Joker.
Joker's
And
henchman, or anybody.
because he's actually like that mind control hypnotist, like you have a reason as to why they're following him too. Like it's actually really brilliant.
Mhm.
And that was a character I was not expecting to like as much as I have.
Me neither. I really enjoyed that storyline for some reason. I was like, wow, that's
Yeah,
pretty good. And then like
it's like
especially
a
when,
really classic Batman story line, and it's done really well.
when they did that scene where he dressed her up in Alice's gear and the long table with the tea and stuff, it actually made you almost feel like you were watching one of the animated shows.
Back in the 90s,
Yeah, I mean it was done really well.
Well, not just that, but then you actually have him like getting in Gordon's head, and when he's like sitting at the stopwalk and he starts hearing the ticking, and it just like that urge, like you can end it all now. It just comes right back. Like that is really well.
Yep, I agree. All right, so jumping out of the DC universe, since this is Marvel DC Kings, we have to do both.
Right.
Right, so let's talk about Luke Cage.
All right.
All right.
Brian, I know you've only seen the first 4 episodes.
Yeah, unfortunately, because of work, a little thing called work, I've only been able to see the first 4, but I've enjoyed it so far.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good.
Aaron, what did you think? You saw it all.
Yeah, I've seen it all. In comparison to Jessica Jones and Daredevil, I don't think it's as good. I still think it's really good. Like I'd actually still put it above like a lot of the shows that are on like mainstream television. But there's a lot of differences between this and previous ones. Like you definitely have like kind of there's a lot more setup in this one, and even towards the end you still kind of get that vibe from it. You have kind of constraints in that you're kind of writing Luke Cage in this kind of Superman paradox where you're trying to make him kind of a moral kind of role model sort of character.
Moral compass for everybody.
Yeah, and then you're also kind of putting him in a position where you have to find ways that you can actually kind of defeat him and beat him because he's, bulletproof essentially, and
Strong.
yeah, like so you have kind of a similar dilemma to writing like a good Superman story, but I actually think it did really good, and it's actually interesting watching it because it's setting up for more in that storyline down the line more than we have seen in either Daredevil or Jessica Jones.
Right, that was one thing I did notice about this one. That I felt like I was watching a setup from the beginning. Like nothing felt like it was finished or anything else. It felt like everything was there just to set up something else. One thing I was really upset about, this isn't really a spoiler for you, but this takes place before Jessica Jones.
It doesn't.
It doesn't?
No.
He doesn't have his bar, though.
No, Rosario Dawson, actually, the nurse that she plays, mentions the bullet wound, or like the head trauma from Jessica Jones that she helped him with on that show. She also mentions the zombie ninja things from Daredevil Season 2, of like people coming out from the like hospital morgue, and that's why she's not in the hospital anymore. She actually talks about how she was more or less forced to resign.
Right, okay, so there's that, but he had a bar.
Yeah, apparently it was like his friend's bar, and he was taking care of it and taking care of the profits from it. It wasn't actually in his name.
Oh, I thought it was his bar.
Well, he was running it,
I
but
thought it was his ex-wife's, or his dead wife's bar or something. That's what I had thought.
yeah,
Jessica
it's
Jones,
something
I
he
don't
was taking care of.
Well,
and
it was just odd that we didn't see Jessica Jones
yeah,
at
Yeah,
all,
it's not
or
even
mentioned
mentioned.
anything in this. It was just very weird.
yeah. Like there's a lot of things that kind of throw it off, especially because you go from Seagate and like the back,
They did a lot of Arrow-esque stuff with the whole flashbacks.
Yeah, you had a lot of
flashbacks.
flashbacks about that, and then you kind of go straight there, and it's kind of skipping over like a lot of his time, like in like Jessica Jones and through Daredevil and running the bar. But it does take place after it because you actually have characters mentioning events from the previous episodes.
Okay, I knew she mentioned stuff from Daredevil, but I didn't know she mentioned stuff from.
Yeah, she does mention from both season 2 of Daredevil and from Jessica Jones.
Okay, and ranking the series, I mean, I'm in the same boat as you. I don't think it was as good as Jessica Jones and the Daredevils, but it was a very good show.
Oh, it's still an amazing show.
But it was not as good as Jessica Jones, nor was it as good as the Daredevils, which I binge watched both seasons of Daredevil before Luke Cage came out, just so I would have everything in
like
case
as
there
a
was
reference.
in case there was any crossovers.
I would venture to say that this, that Luke Cage, and granted I've only seen the first 4 episodes, but I would say from what I've seen so far that I think, let's face it, we're all Caucasian here. I think if you are of different cultures, such as like the African American culture, I think you might find it more appealing.
Possibly.
Than we
definitely.
do. Not to make it. I'm not trying to play a race card or anything. I'm just saying
race is clearly a larger factor here.
The show
Well, it's based in Harlem.
The show is based in Harlem and is based in that culture. So,
and, you also have a character who's trying to keep Harlem black, who's trying to prevent gentrification of the neighborhood.
Right.
There's a lot of cultural elements to it, and I think that the show does a lot better because it includes them, because it references them.
Yeah.
At the same time, I also do think that does kind of hold the narrative of the main character back, because he is being written as a moral figure, because he's being written as a role model.
Well, right. Yeah, he is.
If you look at Jessica Jones and Daredevil, they're not really written that way. You look at Daredevil, who's, even though he's very religious, he doesn't spend his time trying to help out the Catholic Church.
No.
Whereas you look at concepts of community, of being a good citizen, of helping out your fellow man, that's a much bigger part of Luke Cage.
Yeah, and
it's clearly doing that to avoid kind of the thug concept that you might have in modern American media.
Yeah, but what are superheroes for, though, Aaron? They're really, when you think about it, they're there to inspire. I mean, in this modern day and age, we want them to be darker and darker and darker.
Oh, yeah.
But, and more realistic. But in reality, that's why comics really exist.
There is a bit of a power fantasy sort of thing that goes along with superheroes.
Of course there is.
There's a reason that, Superman was written by two men that escaped, the Holocaust.
Right. Well, exactly, and also it's there to they're supposed to be a moral compass. They're supposed to be there to teach. Well, maybe not teach you right from wrong, but to guide you in the right direction.
Okay, so going, not to cut you off.
Yeah.
But going with that.
Okay.
And the whole moral compass on the reverse side.
Okay.
Okay, we talked about the ranking of the series. Basically, we've already ranked the superheroes, how we liked them. And we pretty much all in agreement. It was kind of Daredevil, then Jessica Jones, and then Luke Cage.
Yeah.
So how would we rank their villains? The villains from each series.
Granted,
you get extra villains from Daredevil because you got 2 seasons.
Not including Punisher as a villain.
Correct. I wouldn't.
Okay. Kingpin's definitely the top for me, followed by Purple Man, and then it all squishes together a little bit. I'm not really that interested. I don't find the Hand that terrifying or that great a villain in Daredevil series, even though I know in the comics they are a big villain. But for me, Kingpin and the Doctor Who actor who played Purple Man just did such a great job. Those are show stealers.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. I think those two stole. They raised the bar so high that I think we're gonna be really disappointed with the rest of these villains, except for the villain they decided to name for Defenders, which is going to be Sigourney Weaver.
That looks like that should be pretty interesting.
Because the villains,
as long as she's not an echo terrorist.
I'm not going to spoil anything for Brian, so I'll just call them villains. In Luke Cage.
Think by episode 4 you've seen Cottonmouth as a villain, right?
Yeah.
And they've referenced Diamondback, yeah?
Yeah, I haven't seen him, but he's been referenced.
Him, yeah.
Okay, so
in Cottonmouth's defense though, if you, in terms of his backstory, it was really good.
And I think it's because I was looking more for a supervillain in that aspect, more so than just a urban bad guy.
Yeah.
That's what I would call him.
He's kind of like a low-level Kingpin.
I would even use Kingpin in the same sentence.
Well, he's a low-level kind of running Harlem in terms of gang sort of stuff.
Yeah,
but yeah. I think that's
he's part of the underground, the underworld kind of.
But I think that's why some of the villains in Luke Cage don't really stand up to Kingpin or to Purple Man. Those are characters that are developed, and they are at full force when you first are introduced to them. Whereas you look at the villains in Luke Cage, and they're kind of coming into their own.
Right.
And I think that's why it kind of feels a little different, and you don't really have that sense of pressure from them.
And I think it's the what you hit when you said Luke Cage kind of has that Superman dilemma kind of thing going, and he's basically invincible. So I feel that his supervillain
should be invincible,
or at least
have his.
Be the Lex Luthor of the... You know what I mean? And for me, Diamondback wasn't that. Diamondback was not that at all for me.
Yeah, nor was Cottonmouth.
No, and that's and so for them to be that,
and it is setting up Black Mariah for the next season of Luke Cage whenever they do that. So we'll see how that goes. Either that, or maybe they'll transition after the Defenders to do like a Heroes for Hire sort of thing.
right? So
It has potential. We'll see where it goes. But yeah, I mean, you look at where this season was. There was a lot of setup. You're kind of seeing almost the origin story for certain villains within the show.
By the way, Purple Man is Kilgrave. By the way,
yeah, Kilgrave.
Kilgrave. Okay.
Kilgrave. Yep.
And then we have the rumor that the Defenders are going to be in Infinity War.
That would be sweet.
Possibly show up there, which is cool. And by the Defenders, we mean Daredevil, Jessica Jones,
Luke Cage,
and Iron Fist. And Iron Fist, we just finished watching the trailer tonight. The first time I had seen it.
Yeah.
So, what was your first impression of the Iron Fist trailer?
I mean, it looked really good. And the fact that he has this like super ability, with his fist, Iron Fist, whatever. That looked pretty cool. I'm not sure how much I'm going to be able to believe this white guy is this martial art expert.
Well, it's kind of going with like the same narrative like the old Kung Fu thing did to an extent of like, or even Arrow actually kind of has a similar thing where like he's a rich kid and he gets stranded like in this like certain area and gets raised by these monks and
Right.
So
I'm curious if I can actually.
Yeah, it is kind of an old trope.
He's
Admittedly,
the Great
but
White Ninja.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Great White
there.
Ninja.
If you look at Iron Fist, it is kind of an old
Beverly
school
Hills
trope.
Ninja.
Yeah.
In the same way that Power Man kind of came out of like, was kind of influenced by like old school Shaft, blaxploitation sort of films. So yeah, I mean both Luke Cage and Iron Fist, you kind of have older origins that are a bit kind of tropey. So yeah, there's definitely an element there. But if you look in terms of choreography, like it seems like Netflix really loves that kind of like interesting dynamic battle, like in the hallway sequences, because we've seen that with almost all of their series so far.
Right, exactly.
Though they have been really good. So.
Yeah, like they haven't really done anything wrong yet. The other thing I do like, just talking briefly a little bit more about Luke Cage, was the subtle Easter eggs that they put in there. Brian, pay close attention to. There's a wall of. You might have. I don't know if you got to it yet or not. Episode. How many episodes are there?
13.
13.
13 episodes. 13 episodes in it. You may not have gotten to it yet.
With the Colleen Wing thing?
No, when he goes in and saves the guy from the Wu-Tang Clan.
Oh yeah, no, that's later on.
Okay. On the outside of the shop, I'll just say that.
All right.
Look at the posters.
Okay.
I'll leave it at that.
Right.
It's very cool. Did you just happen to see it?
No, I don't know if I just saw that.
Okay.
I can always get back and check it out.
Yeah,
I can always put my fingers in my ears.
Put your fingers in your ears.
All right, go ahead.
All right. So it's actually Stan Lee
Oh yeah,
on the poster.
Yeah,
It says if you see anything, report it.
Yeah, I saw that.
All right. So that was pretty cool. And then at the very end, the Iron Fist pulls the tag.
The Colleen Wing Martial Arts Academy.
Yes, and she pulls the thing. Okay, Brian.
Oh, thanks God. I can
Yeah.
hear. Oh, I know what happened.
So both of those instances.
Yeah, both of those really aren't that bad in terms of spoilers either.
Yeah, no. I just didn't want to I let him.
Yeah.
One was in the last episode, I do know that, and the other one I can't remember where it was at. It's like maybe 8.
Yeah.
Maybe episode 8 somewhere in there. Anyway, Easter egg.
Yeah. Though going back to Luke Cage briefly on that regard, like the Misty Knight setup for Luke Cage was really well done. Like that was a very well developed character.
Yeah.
Don't forget Punisher and the Defenders, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Is Punisher supposed to be in the Defenders?
And he's getting his own show.
Yeah, he's
Oh,
getting his
really?
own series.
Yeah.
Thank
Nice.
you. Sweet.
They just started filming it. Is that right?
Yeah.
I don't know
that's
if
right. Yeah.
Yeah,
they announced it. I don't know if
Yeah,
they
they
started.
announced
They're
it.
going to
And they're
have
still
the
filming it.
one actress that's on Daredevil play a small role in that as well, right?
Yeah, which is really funny. So I didn't even realize. I realize it now after watching Luke Cage, because you're watching for everybody to connect, right? You're waiting for, and I read. I hate when I do this. I read online about the whole Defenders storyline, and do you know what pulled them all together?
In the comics?
Yeah.
No, off the top of my head.
The death of that character,
Oh, really?
because she had ties to each one of them.
Oh, so
who's
they
the Rosario Dawson
yeah,
character?
the nurse.
Really?
So, there's a petition online
not to leave her.
Yeah, it
alive.
says she deserves better than that.
Yeah.
Don't kill her off. Let her be the connection, but don't kill her off.
Yeah, don't make it like a fridging sort of thing.
Right, so...
Okay.
It's
Like,
an Avenger.
And to be honest, they've taken
Coulson.
some different interpretations on things,
Yeah,
so that's fine if it changes.
I'm hoping that it does change, but you can see the connection, right? So she
Sure.
took care of Daredevil, so she knows who he is. She took care of Jessica Jones, knows who she is.
Luke Cage.
Luke Cage, messed around with him, and then at the very... Kind of a spoiler.
Hmm.
Kind of a spoiler. But anyways,
okay.
but anyway,
to
she was tied to Iron Fist. Right. You're good.
Okay.
But, you know, for them to try to kill her, if they do kill her off, that'll be kind of sad for the show.
Yeah,
But it
I mean,
will-
because she's been
but
a good actress for that show as well,
yeah,
or for all those shows.
She's been a good part of that show. But it will tie them all together.
Strange.
Let's see, what else do we have? Oh, yeah, Doctor Strange.
Yep.
That's the last Marvel thing, so that comes out November 4th.
Yeah, that
Excited
should be-
or not excited?
Oh,
Very
awesome!
excited.
It looks amazing.
I
Like you have, what is it? What is the actor playing the villain? He was in Hannibal, was it? Like Mads Mikkelsen or something?
Yeah, he's actually in Rogue One.
He's
yeah.
in Rogue One.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is he in Rogue One?
Yes,
Yeah.
he is.
I
Yeah.
didn't notice that at
Yeah, he
all.
plays
He's the dad.
Yeah, he
He's
plays
the
Jake's
Egyptian.
dad.
Oh, okay. But like you look at how his like delivery was like in the last trailer for that, and he's like, it fits so well for a villain. I'm hoping this ends up being better than like the nameless villain that we had for like Guardians of the Galaxy, who had a name but I can't remember.
Right. I think it was really funny because when the first trailer came out for Doctor Strange, they showed him, and they showed him, and he's got this like scale around his eyes or whatever,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh my god,
Yeah, it looks very similar, right?
like
Yeah.
this looks so stupid. And then we get the next trailer, like this last one we did. They just played the last one, and he actually has more of a role
Yeah,
in it.
as you hear him talk.
Yes,
like,
and you're like, oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
that might actually be good.
Well, that and I mean, you look at the casting for Doctor Strange, and it's really well done. You have Benedict Cumberbatch for Doctor Strange. You have him playing the villain. You have Brandon Wong, who's like one of the other like characters on the good side. And if you've ever seen him play Kublai Khan on Marco Polo, that dude's a great actor.
I'm looking forward to the series. I knew very little about Doctor Strange when this whole thing started, but the more trailers I see, the more excited I see. They keep saying that Doctor Strange is actually kind of key to the Avengers and kind of turning the Marvel universe on its
he's
head.
like the main like
Yeah.
large sorcerer or magical character in the Marvel
But
universe.
he's the mystic guy.
Yeah, that's
He's
what they said on the trailer. Is like
Yeah.
it's like where the Avengers are the physical presence, you're the mystic one.
right? So he's like Doctor Fate's Marvel's equivalent of Doctor Fate. So from DC, but yeah, it's I'm really excited to see it. I can't.
Well, then
so far, Marvel's hit everything they've done has been a success. And
So
there was a few issues in the early run.
well,
It's
in
like
the early runs,
now
you had
but
the Ghost
ever
Rider
since
films.
the MCU though.
Yeah, now that they've
Even-
hit that one where everything's connected.
Yeah,
They found a way to make Ant-Man good, and that's pretty.
Ant-Man
neat.
was really good.
Yeah, I
Now-
was pleasantly surprised.
See, I'm on the other side of the fence. I don't think that this. I mean, not for us personally. I just don't. I don't think it's going to have the overall world appeal
Strange.
that the Avengers had, because you had Captain America.
Are we
Oh,
talking
sure.
about like the last Avengers or like Civil War?
I'm talking any of them.
Okay.
Okay.
He's not as iconic. I didn't know anything about him.
Right, and it's not that he's not iconic. He
Right.
isn't even the eye candy that Robert Downey Jr. is or Chris Evans is.
Well,
And-
I mean, if we're talking about eye candy, like there's Benedict Cumberbatch has his fans.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is,
Yeah, they're mostly Doctor Who fans, but yeah.
right, but a lot
Sherlock
of
fans.
or Sherlock fans. Yeah,
but
sorry.
a lot of them,
Sorry.
a lot of
He
the
did
big-
really good in Sherlock.
a lot of the
He is
kids that
best.
are they went to go see these movies.
Mm.
They went to go see him because of Iron Man, or because of Captain America, or because of the Hulk. Mom, I want to go see the Hulk. And you're going to see this Doctor Strange, and they're watching it on TV, and they're like,
I could see your so your point is that you don't think it's going to have the wide ranging appeal across like
yes,
ages.
yes. Like for us,
I don't know. I think
for us who have like a semi-comic background or a understanding of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that it all connects together, I think we'll love it.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure by the time you hit like 10 and up, I think you're good. You might below that, it might be an issue.
I think it'll probably bring in more money than Ant-Man will. And Ant-Man did pretty well.
I actually think it will.
I'm thinking it's going to be in that level.
I don't know. I think Ant-Man did well because it was comedy.
It was.
Well,
that ultimately,
yeah, it was a different style.
But like for me, I waited till it came out on video. I wish I hadn't now, but
yeah, I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's just something about it.
As much as I like Ant-Man, I am much more excited about seeing Doctor Strange.
I am too.
And I think
Just
even
a good
you
duo.
look at like him like throwing fireballs or anything along those lines. I think once kids start seeing like some of the action aspects of it, I think they'll probably get into it. They might not be into it from like the psychedelic world bending point of view,
Right, and that's
for me actually is pretty cool.
Right, for a lot of us,
yeah.
we liked that whole world bending thing because we liked what was that movie called?
Inception.
Inception.
Well,
Yeah.
I
Right.
actually go back to like Paprika, but that's a weird reference.
Right. So I mean, cooking spices aside, it's just one of those things. Like a kid sees that, and they're not grasping that whole bending of worlds.
yeah,
and,
it's not just he got hit with a hammer, Mom.
yes,
Yeah.
or even if it was the regular plane hitting with fireballs, I think would actually you'd get that younger audience into it more so than he can bend things with his mind, kind of like I don't know if it's going to have the overall like.
It might not do the opening weekend thing as well with kids, but I think once, like, if their parents or older siblings are going to see it, they'll probably tag along too.
Okay.
But
But do you think you'll have the people that see it like multiple times?
if it turns out well, yeah.
Or is it going to be one of those, you go see it once, just to say you've seen it, you saw the connection to whatever other film.
But I mean, you look at Guardians of the Galaxy, I went back to see that multiple times, and that was not a film I was expecting to see multiple times.
Right, but that had a great story, great soundtrack, it was funny, which is the same thing as Ant-Man, but it was, it was funny and stuff like that. This, I don't see, I don't see the comedy.
Well, I mean, you might not see the comedy because you're, in the trailers, you're dealing
some,
with a lot of the world-building sort of elements to it, because this is taking place so far aside from, like, the Avengers and from all the other characters. This is the mystical realm. This almost does have to set up its own sort of, like, part of the universe.
Right.
So
It does.
that might not be coming through in the trailers if it's there, because you do have to kind of grasp the larger thing so people know what they're walking into.
Right, it could be one of those things, like, even when it could be one of those, like, where we won't see the humor until we get into the movie.
Well, I've seen a few things in the trailer as far as humor. The one, they give him some mystical word, and he's like, "What does this mean?" Well, it's a sci-fi. It's the Wi-Fi password. It's
I think the villain role in, like, I think the last trailer was probably one of the funniest things. It's like the name's strange, or he's like, well, Doctor or something like that. It's like playing like wordplay with like his actual name, and it's like, well, it is, but who am I to judge? Sort of thing.
The other thing, the cloak is mocking him. His own cloak that he puts on. It favors you, but it starts mocking him and stuff. It's pretty funny.
Really, is that in the trailer?
It is in the trailer.
I
didn't
completely
see that.
missed that.
Yeah,
We might have to watch it after this podcast.
Yeah, we'll watch it after
that
the
actually
podcast.
sounds really cool.
It just very ever so subtly. It's like the collars on the thing start screwing with. It's funny.
Oh, okay. That sounds cool, man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, guys, I think that was a very productive podcast.
It was.
We covered basically everything Marvel DC that's been out so far.
It was good to be back.
All right. You guys, if you need to find us, you guys can all find us on Google. Just Google the number 4 Midwest Guys, and you'll have to pull up our Facebook page and our YouTube page and our iTunes and Podbean and everywhere else, wherever else you probably found us at. We are in the process of going. We've gotten now a video camera.
Yep.
We have our mics. Next setup is to build the set.
Yep.
And then we'll be doing our online video podcasting.
Coming 2017.
So we are one step at a time. So hope you're there for us. Maybe by the end of this, we'll call this season 2 of Marvel DC Kings.
Hopefully, it will be videoed. Hopefully, coming 2017. Midwest Guys goes video.
Yeah. All right. B. Willie, thanks for joining me.
Absolutely, anytime, dude.
Aaron, thanks for being on the show.
Yep, no problem.
And I'm Brian Inkenbauer. And we'll see you next time.
Inkenbauer.
Inkenbauer.